Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. I have asked you to go through the chapter of assessment of individuals, that is computation of total income and tax liability of individuals, particularly at the intermediate level. Our focus will be mostly on the individuals only, and I hope you have gone through that. There are certain areas which require special attention. We'll quickly go through this process of computation of total income and finally finding out how much is the tax payable by the SSE. All of this is known already. Most of these things are not new, but you can consider it as a quick revision of overall bird's eye view of the entire process of computation of total income and tax liability. Of course, the first step will be the determination of residential status, naturally, and then the incomes will be classified into 5 heads of income, as we know: salaries, income from house property, PGBP, capital gains, and income from other sources. And after adding up all of them by giving permissible exemptions under section 10 or any deductions available under each respective heads of incomes related provisions, the income has to be aggregated, which is nothing but totaled. Then clubbing provisions have to be applied, set off and carry forward provisions have to be applied if applicable. The resultant is called gross total income. Then the deductions from the gross total income in accordance with chapter 6A have to be given, and the final outcome of this process is total income, on which the tax has to be calculated at the applicable tax rates. The same thing is mentioned here also, because particularly here we are going to focus on individuals. So if at all individual is earning income, just the 5 heads of incomes definitely will be aggregated. But certain items, like if the person is receiving certain incomes as a partner of the firm, then we need to also identify this particular provision, which we know already: the salary, bonus, etc. received by a partner is taxable as business income. Same way, interest on capital and loans to the firm also is taxable as business income of the partner. To what extent they are allowed, to what extent they are taxable in the hands of partner, to the extent they are allowed as deduction under 40B to the firm. That is, if the individual we are talking about is earning some income as a partner of the firm, but if the partner receives any share in the profit of the firm, that will be exempt from tax. That is a very important point also to note. What if the individual is receiving incomes as a member of HUF? Once again, the share of one particular member of HUF in the entire HUF's income is exempt from tax. And other things related to HUF. For example, in case of impartiable estate of HUF, it is taxable in the holder of the estate who is the eldest member of HUF. In case the income from self-acquired property is converted into joint family property, then also it will be included in the hands of the income of transferor. That we know. And same way, clubbing provisions related to various individuals are already applicable, wherein the transferor transfers the income without the transfer of assets, or transfers the asset as a revocable transfer. In all cases, clubbing provisions are applicable. Other provisions related to the income of spouse and income of son's wife and income of minor children, all of these things are applicable to the individual. and those incomes, though they are not earned by the individual, still will be considered as incomes of that particular individual. That is a summary of how individuals can earn income, be it as their own income or as a income received from the firm as a partner, or income received from HUF as a member, or though the income is earned by somebody else, still it could be taxable in the hands of the individual if clubbing provisions are applicable. And the same things are further explained here one by one. Just for a quick revision, you can go through them, but of course you need to be thorough with them. So just the process mentioned here is not enough. Definitely revision of that particular chapter applicable provisions is must. So naturally the step 1 is determination of residential status of the SSC. Then naturally step 2 is classification of income under different heads, and we know all those heads, what are those. Then compute the income under each of those heads according to the provisions applicable under those heads of income. Of course, wherever there are some specific exemptions as provided in section 10, they have to be given. That has to be already done. And if any deductions are there within that head, allow them. If there are no deductions or there are some non-permissible deductions, disallow them. All these things are done within the heads of income themselves, and after that total of all that will be the SSC's income from all the heads of income. Afterwards clubbing provisions will apply. Afterwards set off and carry forward provisions also apply in relation to losses, if any. Each of them as chapters separately discussed, and we need to revise them. How the intra-head set off of losses happens, intra-head set off of losses happens, carry forward of losses, and how can they be carried forward and set off. All these points are very important things. Then you compute the gross total income. How do we do that? Same way. First add incomes computed under each head, then apply clubbing provisions, then apply set off and carry forward if applicable. After we got the gross total income, next step will be to give chapter 6A deductions. There are many deductions, you need to remember them from that chapter. Here only summary of them. Some of them are given as examples. That's all. After giving the deductions, what we get is called total income. That is also called as taxable income. So the tax is calculated on the total income of the SSC. That is the main point. Because in the computation of total income related questions, one line, additional line, also compute tax liability is always easier to be added. So we should be ready to calculate total income also with this procedure up to step 8. Then we have to be also knowing the tax rates, which we already know according to the Annual Finance Act. That is to apply the relevant rates of tax on the total income and compute the income tax liability. And we know the tax rates, particularly for individuals, we need to know them here because we're talking about assessment of individuals. For those who are normal individuals, how the tax has to be calculated, these are the slab rates, should know them already. For senior citizens, the basic exemption limit will be 3 lakhs. For super senior citizens, the basic exemption limit will be 5 lakhs. So for normal people, 2,50,000 basic exemption limit, senior citizens 3 lakhs, super senior citizens 5 lakhs. That's it. All these things are known. Nothing is new here. And after finding out the base tax liability, we have to also understand there are special rates of tax which are in the Income Tax Act itself. Like for example 112 tax on long-term capital gains, that is 20%. Like 112A, that is tax on the long-term capital gain exceeding 1 lakh rupees on the transfer of listed equity shares, where the excess of 1 lakh rupees is taxable at the rate of 10%. That was 112A. 111A is also related to the equity shares only, but short-term capital gains, where the flat rate of tax of 15% is applicable. Casual income is taxable at the rate of 30%. All these special rates also to be applied if there is any income arising from such type of sources. But all other incomes, definitely those are all taxable using slab rates. These special rates of tax have to be applied on the amounts which are specifically mentioned in the Income Tax Act. That is the point here to be noted while computing the tax liability. Okay, base tax after you calculated, there is a possibility of rebate also under section 87A, or there could be surcharge also possible depending upon the income of the SSE. If the SSE's total income does not exceed 5 lakhs, then a maximum rebate of 12,500 is available. We know this already. If the SSE's income exceeds 5 lakhs, there is no rebate. Whereas the rebate under section 87A is not available in respect of tax payable under section 112A. That is one more point also we discussed earlier in the capital gains chapter. That should be remembered. The rebate under 87A is not available in respect of the tax payable at the rate of 10% on long-term capital gains taxable under 112A, that is related to equity shares, where more than 1 lakh rupees long-term capital gain on the sale of equity shares is taxable at the rate of 10%. Their rebate is not applicable, not available. Same way, if at all the SSE is having incomes of more than 50 lakhs, then depending upon what is their income falling under which bracket, some relevant surcharge, any one of them only will be applied. Surcharges are not slab rates. It is directly a condition that you have to check what is the income of the SSE. Accordingly, applicable rate of surcharge, either 10%, 15, 25 or 37% surcharge has to be calculated. So after adding the surcharge, we have to add 4% health and education cess, inclusive of surcharge and exclusive of rebate if any. So tax, first of all, you have to calculate base tax using slab rates or special rates as the case may be. Add surcharge and deduct rebate if any. After this, add 4% health and education cess. Then what we get is the total tax liability of the individual. This is very straightforward so far, all that we know, and we can calculate this. Now the story changes. Now we all know there are certain tax benefits which are given to certain types of businesses, and as a result of the tax benefit, a lot of people actually might not ending up paying any tax also. So what the government said is, you have to pay alternative minimum tax. So according to the entire normal calculation after we calculated, we can suddenly come out and say, no, this is not correct. Something else is there. Now identify this carefully. That is alternative minimum tax. For individuals, we call it alternative minimum tax, which is enough for us. For others, it is called MAT, that is minimum alternative tax. That is for other types of SSEs. Anyway, we don't need that. Our focus here is only on AMT, that is alternative minimum tax, to be payable by individuals. Why this is required to be paid? Of course, the law says so. But why the law says so? Because this person might have claimed a lot of benefits under the Income Tax Act, and finally he might have shown no income. What kind of benefits are claimed here? Related to certain incomes. Certain deductions under section 80 are related to incomes. We know some of them. 80QQB, RRB, TTA, TTB. Those are all deductions on the basis of certain incomes. As a result of which, the total income of the SSE has become less, and he is paying lesser tax maybe because of that. Or maybe the SSE would have claimed some benefit under section 10AA. That is relief under section 10AA. That is also there as part of our syllabus. So we should know what is that. We will discuss it also. Or SSE might have claimed certain deductions which we know already, 35AD, that is specified business. So SSE might have got, let us say, 50 lakhs rupees profit. He would have invested some, say, 60 lakhs rupees or 40 lakhs rupees worth of machinery in a specified business, the entire amount 100% he can claim deduction happily under 35 AD. We know that. So he ends up paying no tax. Government says, no, Baba, you took the deduction, fine, but you cannot say I will not pay any tax or I will pay lesser tax. You are bound to pay alternate minimum tax. So for whom this AMT is applicable, first of all, those SSCs who have claimed deductions under section 80 where deductions are related to certain incomes. For those people who claim deductions on the basis of their investments or expenditure, there is no problem. But those who claim deduction in respect of certain incomes, for them we have to check AMT provisions also. Normal calculation will not hold good. Or somebody who has claimed deduction, exemption, what to call also is questionable, relief, benefit under section 10AA, those people also will have to check whether AMT provisions are applicable and are they required to pay any minimum tax which is more than the tax that is supposed to be paid by them according to normal calculation. Same way somebody who has claimed deduction under section 35 AD for specified business also, AMT would be applicable. First of all, that is a point to be noted. We'll come to this AMT once again, but before that, let us just quickly go through what is this 10AA. That is a kind of deduction, you call it, exemption, you call it. The names are different, but still, benefit definitely yes. Under 10AA, those SSCs who have established any units in special economic zones can claim some benefit. Who are the eligible SSCs here? Who have PGBP from an undertaking. Which type of undertaking? Unit engaged in the manufacture or production of any articles of thing or provision of any service, means any undertaking basically. But that individual or that SSC, whoever it may be, is an entrepreneur as defined under SEZ Act, that is Special Economic Zones Act. So what the SSC is supposed to do in order to claim this exemption? General things only, don't need to be really thorough with all these things. Generally, of course, he should have started manufacturing articles or providing any services in a special economic zone. There are so many special economic zones in India where the SSC should have started the business. When starting from assessment year 2006-07, but not later than assessment year 2021. So this year is the last, we can say, almost for this. But still, we are still in assessment year 2021. So definitely, if any business is started newly in the previous year in a special economic zone, they will get 10AA already. And they should not be formed by splitting up or reconstruction. That should be a real new unit. That is one condition. And they can transfer old machinery, no problem, but only up to 20% of total value of machinery. For that purpose, all others machineries which are to be purchased for the setting up of this unit should be new basically. Up to 20% it's okay. That is one point. And if at all any machinery is imported, it is considered as good as fresh even though it was used outside India, if it was not used prior to importing in India naturally. So these are all some basic things that are supposed to be done, and certain forms SC has to submit. All these things are okay. We are not interested in the minute administrative details of it. What we should remember is there is a benefit, deduction, exemption, relief, what you call it, whatever the name may be, there is a benefit. Let us call it exemption only. So there is an exemption available because it is section 10 related provision. Exemption to special economic zones is there related to certain incomes. Which SSCs will be eligible for it? Those who establish a business, whether manufacturing or service, in a special economic zone after the assessment year 2006-07 will get this benefit under 10AA. And they have to start this business freshly, not by reconstruction. They have to use at least 80% new machinery. These are the various conditions which are there. Now, we know this already. Assessment year 2006-7 means what? Previous year 2005-6 means SSC should have started the business definitely on or after 1/4/2005. On or after 1/4/2005. That is already inherently given in the earlier condition itself. Then what is the amount of deduction and what is the period of deduction? Look at this. 100% of the profits. 100% means the entire profits. They don't need to pay any tax. That is why we call it a tax holiday for those units which are established in special economic zone. But don't think entire profit means entire profit. The 100% of profit from the export, not the services which are provided in India or not the goods which are sold in India. So the export sales should be there for this unit in SEZ. If the export sales happened, from that export sales, how much ever profit is earned by them, it is fully exempt, completely. Up to what period? Not like definitely infinitely. Up to 5 consecutive assessment years, beginning from the year in which the SC has started the business, naturally. Of course, it should have started on or after 1/4/2005. Don't think on 1/4/2005 only they should start. 1/4/2005 onwards, anytime they would have started. But from that year onwards, 5 consecutive assessment years, they will get 100% tax holiday. They don't have to pay any tax on the profits which were derived from export of articles or things or services up to 5 years. Story is not over. After that, for another 5 years, 50% of such profits and gains are exempted. Half of them are exempted directly. So first 5 years, 100% of the profits. Next 5 years, 50% of the profits. Still the story is not over. Another 5 years is there. Another 5 years. Next 5 consecutive years, 50% of the profits will be given as exemption, but there is a condition. What is the condition? They should have debited the P&L account and credited to a reserve account some money. Whatever the money they have credited to the reserve account, something called Special Economic Zone Reinvestment Reserve Account. That's a kind of statutory reserve according to the Income Tax Act. So if they credit that account, reserve account, keep it there. And of course, the reserve account has to be used. Keep it there does not mean it will be just kept idle. But if the export-oriented unit of Special Economic Zone has set aside some amount in the reserve account, how much our amount is set aside, on that 50% can be claimed as reduction. That is a condition here. So first 5 years 100%, no conditions, directly 100% of the profits from export sales. Export is important here. Second 5 years, next 5 years also 50% of the profits from export sales. Afterwards also you can continue to claim the reduction of 50% of profits provided you have credited that amount, whatever the amount you want to claim as exemption on which 50% is allowed, to a reserve account called Special Economic Zone Reinvestment Reserve Account. That is how the deduction or exemption under 10AA can be given. That's all. That's it. That is enough actually. That is the core provision of 10AA. Then, for example, here some dates if you take. An undertaking is set up in a Special Economic Zone and begins the manufacturing on 15th of October 2005 on or after 1/4/2005. So it is okay, it is eligible. For first 5 years, 100% of profits. Next 5 years, 50% of profits. Next 5 years, 50% of profits provided certain conditions are satisfied, something like they have to credit this amount to the reserve and they have to use that reserve for acquisition of machinery. Like that, so many conditions are there. Those have to be fulfilled for the third period of 5 years. We don't need all those conditions and all. But definitely that money cannot be used for distribution of dividends, cannot be used for remittance outside India, or cannot be used for creation of any asset outside India. That money should be in India as a reserve, and that should be utilized for the purpose of acquiring machinery, but should not be utilized for these purposes: distribution of dividends, sending it outside, or creation of any asset outside India. That is a condition. If they follow, they can claim the exemption of 50% of the amount, how much ever is deposited in that reserve, of course, subject to the profits. 50% of the profits is allowed as exemption. And then naturally, if at all this misutilization or non-utilization happens, whatever earlier claimed as exemption will have to become taxable. That's it. That is about tax holiday for special economic zone export-oriented units. Now, how to calculate this exemption or deduction? Simple. We have to use this formula. Whatever the profit of that unit in the SEZ is there, in that proportionate profit will be only exempted. How to calculate proportionate profit? Export turnover of the unit in SEZ divided by total turnover of the unit in SEZ. We are talking about only the unit in SEZ. If at all any company is having one unit in SEZ and one unit in outside SEZ, that is generally called free trade area. So in case of units in SEZ only, this deduction of 10AA is available. How to calculate that? Profits of the unit in SEZ multiply with export turnover divided by total turnover. Profit into ET by TT. That's all. Of what? Everything is for the unit in SEZ. So is this applicable for computer software also? Yes, it is. It is applicable. What is export turnover? Export turnover is the consideration that is received into India, right, by the SSE related to whatever the services or goods that he is exporting, naturally. But only point here is, if at all it is given in the question, it does not include freight, telecommunication charges and insurance. So export turnover should be excluded with these three things. If at all it is already included in that, freight, insurance and telecommunication charges have to be excluded from export turnover. Of course, when they are excluded from the export turnover, that is in the numerator, they have to be excluded from the total turnover also. You cannot do it only in the numerator. Okay, so that's what is clarified in CBDT circular also. Export turnover will have to be excluded with the freight, telecommunication charges or insurance. Same way, total turnover also has to be excluded with the same things for the calculation of exemption under 10AA. So that is the 10AA. Then after that, if it is conversion of something into SEZ, we don't need that. Other things are all not required. Directly how to calculate the exemption under 10AA is our area of interest. So look at this now as an illustration how to calculate it. Y Limited furnishes you the following information for the year ended 31st March 2020. Total turnover of unit located in special economic zone, that is 100 lakhs. Profit of business in unit A, and this unit A is located in special economic zone. The profit is 30 lakhs. Export turnover of unit A is 50 lakhs. And turnover of unit B located in domestic tariff area, which is not special economic zone. We don't need to worry about any other names. We don't need to know also. Those will be known to you anyway in the Customs Act later and final. But right now, special economic zone is our only word, buzzword. And that is the only thing which is eligible for exemption. Domestic tariff area, all other things, we don't care. But it is given. Total turnover is given for unit B, which is located not in special economic zone. Profit of unit in business B is, profit of the business in unit B is also 20 lakhs. So these two have no exemption under 10AA at all. So these two are just normal profits. One is turnover, one is profit. So 20 lakhs will be normally taxable as usual. Compute the deduction under 10AA, assuming that Y Limited commenced operations in the year 2016-17. So are we within the 5 years period that you have to look at? 16-17 is the previous year. So 16-17, 17-18, 18-19, 19-20 is our previous year, which is fourth year. So yes, 100% of profits from the export of goods and services will be eligible for exemption or deduction. But how to get the profit which is attributable to the exports? Because the total profit of business of unit A is 30 lakhs. That is total profit. Entirely it is not from exports. That is why we have to take proportionately. How to take that? Profit of unit A multiplied with export turnover of unit A, which is 50 lakhs, divided by total turnover of unit A, which is 100 lakhs. That means half of that. So what is the exemption available or deduction available under 10AA? 15 lakhs. That's all. What will be the taxable profits? So here, profit of the business in unit A has been 30 lakhs. In that 15 lakhs is exempt, means 15 is taxable. And 20 lakhs is there, which is a normal profit from normal unit, not SEZ. So total taxable income for this particular SC will be 35 lakhs. That's it. So what is the exemption here? Amount that was asked as 15 lakhs. This can be a very much MCQ question, quite possible. So remember the formula very well. Profit of the business in the unit of SEZ, in the SEZ, multiplied with the export turnover of unit in SEZ divided by total turnover of unit in SEZ. Other data you should not unnecessarily include here. That's it about 10AA. And let us solve another question which was given earlier in exams. This one. Rudra Limited has one unit at SEZ and also another unit in DTA, which is not SEZ. Company provides the following details for the previous year 1920. So look at this case here. Rudra Limited's total amounts are given and unit in DTA amounts are given. So naturally we can find out how much is the details for unit in SEZ, which is not given directly. We have to find out indirectly. So let us say total sales are 6 crores. Unit in DTA has 2 crore sales. Naturally 4 crores will be in SEZ. Export sales of total entire Rudra Limited is 4.6 crores. Unit in DTA is having 1.6 crores export sales. That means naturally 3 crores is export sales of SEZ. Then net profit of entire company is 80 lakhs and unit in DTA had 20 lakhs. So we are taking everything crores. So let us say how much will be the profit here of unit in SEZ. That will be 0.6 crores. 0.6 crores. That is nothing but 60 lakhs. So everything is there. So profit of unit in SEZ is 60 lakhs. Export turnover of unit in SEZ is 3 crores. Total turnover of unit in SEZ is 4 crores. From the information we can easily identify, though it is not given directly. Now he asks about eligible deduction for the assessment year 2021. Naturally that is our year. If the both units were set up in year 2012-13, right? 2012-13. Then you have to check whether it is within the 5 years period or not. No, it seems 12-13, 13-14, 14-15, 15-16, 16-17 over. So how much exemption they can get? They can get, but not full. 50% only they can get. Half only they can get exemption. But here, if the units are set up and started manufacturing in 2016-17, since it is the first 5 years of their setup, they will get 100% exemption related to the profits from the unit in SEZ which have been derived from export sales. How much is that? Once again, straightforward. What is the profit of the unit in SEZ? First of all, 60 lakhs. Now I am taking lakhs here. This is 60 lakhs. Multiply with export turnover of unit in SEZ. That was 3 crores. Divided by total turnover of unit in SEZ. That was 4 crores. That means 60 into 75% or 3 by 4. That is how much? 45 lakhs is exempt under 10AA. In the second case, what was the question? Eligible exemption only is asking under 10AA. Answer for second question is 45 lakhs. Answer for first question will be naturally half of that, which will be 22.5 lakhs. That's it. That will be the answer for this question. In the first case, where the unit was established in 2012-13. Exemption for our assessment year will be only 22.5 lakhs. In the second case, exemption will be 45 lakhs. That's all. This is how 10AA exemption or deduction, whatever you call it, can be calculated in questions if the details related to the export turnover, total turnover and profit of the units in SEZ is given. Whatever the way it is given, calculation has to focus only on SEZ. Remaining all data is useless. Like this, somebody has claimed exemption under 10AA, because of which their profits could be very less and they pay less tax. Government says no. You have to pay alternative minimum tax if you claimed exemption already under 10AA. Same way, they could have claimed some deductions under section 80 under the category of deductions in respect of certain incomes. Then also AMT might be applicable. Same way, somebody would have claimed a deduction under section 35 AD for specified business, because of which the total income is much lesser once again and they pay much lesser tax. No, that might not be permissible because AMT will be applicable. So the alternate minimum tax is applicable in case of these three kinds of SSCs for us, because we are only focusing on individuals. What are the three cases? Where they have claimed certain deductions under section 80 under the category of deductions of incomes, or they have claimed deduction or exemption under 10AA, or they have claimed deduction under 35 AD. Any of these people, if they have claimed such deductions or benefits or exemptions, then they have to check whether AMT is applicable for them. However, these provisions of AMT will not be applicable if the adjusted total income of such persons is not exceeding 20 lakhs rupees. So small businessmen, small people, small income holders, no need to worry about AMT. If the adjusted total income does not exceed 20 lakhs rupees. Then what is the adjusted total income definitely becomes important. That is also important. We have to look at that. And as I told already, our focus here in the intermediate level will be not on any of these things. What are these things also you don't need to know. These are all covered at final level. So none of these things is applicable to us. Only we'll focus on what? 10AA, 35 AD and certain deductions which we know, like 80 JJAA, 80 QQB, 80 RRB, 80 TTA, TTB. Those are the deductions in respect of certain incomes. That's all. Okay, done. Okay, fine. This is where the AMT is applicable. So what? How to calculate AMT and all? When we have to calculate this? We will calculate with all our understanding of process of computation of total income, all great things we have already learned. And we calculate normal income tax liability according to the normal provisions of the Income Tax Act that we already did. Now, if that is less than the AMT, if that income that is computed or the income tax payable that is computed according to the provisions of income tax, which we have been doing all these days, if that is by any chance less than the AMT, then adjusted total income will be deemed to be the total income of the person. So, government says, or the law says, take the deductions. We were very happy. 10AA, oh wow, 50% of the profit, 100% of the profit. Yes, we took the deduction. After taking the deduction, because of the deduction, our tax liability is less. The government says, no, you cannot pay that less tax. You have to pay AMT at least. At least alternative minimum tax you have to pay. You cannot pay the normal tax that is computed by using all the knowledge of Income Tax Act. So far, all of that goes to one side. AMT comes to the front. For AMT, you don't need anything. All that you need to know is what is adjusted total income, and just straight away 18.5% tax you have to pay. That's all. Of course, 18.5% is the base tax, plus a surcharge, if any, plus cess always, that we know, which is 4%. That will be always there. So 18.5% alternate minimum tax is payable by those people whose income tax liability under normal computation of income tax using the provisions of Income Tax Act 1961 is less than the AMT payable. In that case, they have to pay 18.5% AMT, that is 18.5% of adjusted total income, not the total income which was computed earlier. Now we have to find out adjusted total income. What is adjusted total income? Same things. All the three that we know, they have to be added to the total income. Simple. Means the total income before giving effect to these things like 10AA benefit, 35AD benefit, or the deductions under chapter 6A, some of them which are related to incomes. So if the SSC did not claim these exemptions, how much would have been his total income? That is called adjusted total income. In other words, after calculating the total income, you just add back all the deductions which are claimed under 10AA or 35AD or other deductions of 80JJ, AA, QQB or RRB. That is what is adjusted total income, on which how much AMT is payable? 18.5% AMT is payable, plus surcharge plus cess is always there. Surcharge, if applicable, will also be required to be paid. But the point to be noted here is, if AMT becomes applicable, if the tax liability under normal computations is anyway less than AMT, automatically the adjusted total income is deemed to be the total income of the SSC. That's all. Normal total income, whatever we calculated, is not relevant. Adjusted total income itself will be deemed to be the total income of the SSC. Looks very unfair, but can't help it. That's how it is. On one hand, we give deduction. On the other hand, we say, because of deduction, your tax liability reduced, my collection reduced, so pay minimum tax to me. But don't worry, that is all not completely unfair also. Whatever the AMT that you pay, that can be taken as a tax credit. It means the difference between whatever the regular income tax that you were supposed to pay, but you paid because of application of AMT, that difference can be carried forward up to a period of 15 years. So the AMT credit can be carried forward and set off up to 15 years succeeding the assessment year in which the credit becomes available. So after this assessment year is over, next year onwards, 15 years, this AMT credit can be used for future tax payments, if any. In case in future you have to pay some tax, you can use this AMT tax credit. Because in future also you might have to pay AMT. Then you can use the credit of AMT which was already paid. So that can be set off against what? Against the income tax payable in the future years. What is that extent? To the extent of excess of regular income tax payable under the provisions of the Act over the AMT payable in that year. So in any year in future, for example, normal income tax payable that year is more, AMT payable was less. Where the position of AMT credit itself has arisen, because normal income tax payable was, let us say, 10 lakhs, AMT was 15 lakhs. You have to pay AMT. Sorry about that. See, normally in 1 year, the income tax payable according to Income Tax Act, what we calculated with all our non-provisions so far, is 10 lakhs. But AMT, suppose, was 15 lakhs. You have to pay AMT. How much AMT credit is carried forward? 5 lakhs credit is carried forward. This happened already. Let us say in future, 1 year, one of the years, next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years afterwards, whatever it may be, the normal income tax payable was, say, 18 lakhs. According to AMT, if at all, it was calculated, let us say, it was only 15 lakhs. So, how much you need to pay there? You don't need to pay 18 lakhs. You can use the 3 lakhs credit of AMT against this, and you just need to pay 15 lakhs. So the credit that you have now towards AMT can be adjusted in future against the difference between normal income tax payable and AMT in future. If at all, the regular income tax payable is more than AMT payable in future. So now AMT itself has arisen because AMT is more than regular income tax. The credit can be used in future where regular income tax would be more than AMT. Then instead of paying 18 lakhs, you can pay only 15 lakhs AMT, and this 3 lakhs credit can be utilized for that purpose. Of course, still 2 lakhs will be there, which can be further carried forward. This is a cumulative account. It keeps on going for up to 15 years, succeeding the assessment year in which the credit becomes allowable. Okay, that's all. That is about alternative minimum tax that we also need to know. Because questions can be asked on computation of adjusted gross total income, or how much is the final tax liability of the SSC according to normal income tax provisions, and AMT, which one is applicable. We should be able to definitely know that. Let us do some question here. I hope you are already doing the remaining questions, which you can normally anyway solve using your various provisions of Income Tax Act. Now let us go to question number 11 in this chapter of assessment of individuals, wherein it is a mix of both what we have understood today, that is SEZ related calculation, also AMT calculation. Mr. X is an individual who has set up a unit in the special economic zone in the financial year 15-16. 15-16 means 15-16, 16-17, 17-18, 18-19, 19-20 our previous year. Within 5 years, this is the 5th year, so no problem. 100% of the profits from export of whatever he manufactures, washing machines he manufactures, computers he manufactures, we don't care. That is allowed as reduction under 10AA. And the unit fulfills all the conditions under the section 10AA of the Income Tax Act already. And during the financial year 18-19, he also has set up a warehousing facility in a district of Tamil Nadu for storage of agricultural produce. So that should strike something to us. Warehousing facility for storage of agricultural produce is eligible for deduction under 35AD. That's what is mentioned also, because it fulfills all the conditions of section 35AD also. And a capital expenditure in respect of warehouse amounted to 75 lakhs, including the cost of land of 10 lakhs. And you should remember 35AD, land is not allowed as deduction under 35AD, means capital expenditure can be only allowed how much under 35AD, maximum 65 lakhs. And the warehouse has become operational with effect from 1st April 2019, that is during our previous year. And an expenditure of 75 lakhs was capitalized in the books of accounts. We don't care. We give deduction only up to 65 lakhs. Then the relevant details for the financial year are given. Profit of the unit located in SEZ is 40 lakhs. Export sales of the above unit are 80 lakhs. Domestic sales of the above unit means unit located in SEZ, are 20 lakhs. Understand carefully, don't blindly do it. What will be the total sales then? 80 plus 20, 100 lakhs. So how much can be claimed as exemption under 10AA? That can be easily calculated. Profit of the unit located in SEZ 40 lakhs into export sales 80 divided by total sales, including export and domestic sales, 100. So 80% of 40 means 32 lakhs can be claimed as deduction under 10AA. Looking very happy so far. Then, not only that, profit from operations of the warehousing facility was 105 lakhs, let us say all of them lakhs. So 105 lakhs is the profit from warehousing facility that he has created in Tamil Nadu. But this is before considering deduction under 35AD. But we can give deduction under 35AD. We know that. How much was that? 65 lakhs. So 105 lakhs minus 65 lakhs. Why 65? Land cannot be claimed as deduction. 105 lakhs minus 65 lakhs will be 40 lakhs. That will be taxable in relation to the unit of warehousing facility. 32 was exemption, not taxable. So how much would have been taxable? Out of 40, 32 is exemption under 10AA, means taxable will be 8. So 8 lakhs is taxable for the unit located in SEZ. 40 lakhs is taxable for the warehousing facility. Till now, to the extent of the income tax provisions that we know, total will be 48 lakhs. That's what we know already. Normally we think yes, that is what he has to pay tax on, which is 48 lakhs. Now you have to calculate normal tax liability on 48 lakhs. Do that one with the calculators. 48 lakhs minus 10 lakhs into 20% plus 1,12,500. Sorry, 30%. 48 lakhs minus 10 lakhs into 30% plus 1,12,500. That is 12,52,500 base tax. Surcharge not applicable because income did not exceed 50 lakhs. Just add normal cess. After adding cess of 4%, that is 13 lakhs 2,600. That is all what we know. Very innocently we can calculate all this and think that this guy will just get away by paying a tax of 13 lakhs 2,600. But no. Why? Because he is the one who has claimed deduction under 35AD and also under 10AAA. So we have to check whether AMT provision is applicable. For that purpose, we should know how much is AMT. For that purpose, we should know how much is the adjusted total income. What is adjusted total income? Nothing but total income before the deductions. So we have to calculate this carefully. So total income normally what we have computed is 48 lakhs. That is okay. Whatever deduction claimed under 10AA was 32 lakhs. That should be added back. And add the deduction under 35AD 65 lakhs. That should be added back. But one point to be noted once again. Because 35AD is fully added back, he will be eligible for deduction under depreciation of section 32. That should be given. So that should be deducted. So add 65 lakhs, deduct 6,50,000, which is deduction of building depreciation of 10%. So that comes to adjusted total income of 1,38,50,000. Now AMT you have to calculate on that. 1,38,50,000 on that AMT is how much? 18.5%. We should remember that rate. 18.5%. That comes to 25,62,250. Story is not over. Because now adjusted total income itself, because already we know that AMT is more than total tax liability. So definitely AMT is applicable. Then if AMT is applicable, adjusted total income itself will be deemed to be the total income. That means his total income is not now 48 lakhs. It is 1,38,50,000, which means surcharge is applicable. Surcharge is applicable at the rate of 15% since the income exceeded 1 crore. So take 15% surcharge, add it to that. Then add 4% cess on that. Then after adding all of this, total will come to 30,64,451, rounded to 450 according to Income Tax Act. So 288B section. So 30,64,450 is a income that is income tax finally that is payable by this SSC, but not 13 lakhs. So where is 13 lakhs? There is 30,64,450. There is a big amount. Okay. So that is the application of AMT, alternate minimum tax. For this purpose, we should first find out adjusted total income by adding up 10AA deduction if any claimed, adding up 35AD deduction if any claimed. But once you add up 35AD, you have to also give deduction under section 32, depending upon the asset. Don't say all of us 10%. If machinery was claimed, then 15% depreciation can be claimed. So normal depreciation, which is anyway the right of the SSC, that can be deducted. After doing these adjustments, whatever we get is adjusted total income. 18.5% of adjusted total income is AMT, and once it is AMT attracting, then the adjusted total income itself becomes the total income. So surcharge also, as applicable, will be calculated and added. 4% is common always. Final tax liability in this case is 30,64,450 rupees, not 13,02,600 rupees. So, but that also we have to calculate. We have to calculate. You cannot say anyway it is not useful. It is useful. Why? Because we can take the credit also here. So, what is the credit that can be carried forward? What is the difference between these two? 30,64,450 minus 13,02,600. The difference between these two can be taken as AMT credit. That will be 17,61,850. How it can be used in future, in further 15 years? Whenever the actual tax liability becomes more than AMT, then that difference can be adjusted against the AMT credit. So that is how AMT credit will be useful in future. For up to 15 years, this can be carried forward after this assessment year, not including this assessment year. That's all. That is application of AMT, that is alternative minimum tax. Working notes as we already calculated. That is the way AMT provisions have to be applied. 10 AA provisions also have to be applied. That's a little different thing what we already know than what we know. Right? So now that we have understood the concept of AMT, let us also further take it to step 13. Step 12 was AMT in the computation of final tax liability of the SSC. Up to step 11 we know. Step 12 suddenly came in as a surprise, but yes, that is applicable for certain cases. Now, step 13 is further going to change our perception of tax. That is, credit for advance tax, TS or TCS. So, the provisions here, whatever we are talking about, are related to advance tax, TDS and TCS. We will discuss them separately as a topic. But the concept of them we have to understand now. So, basically what is TDS? TDS is a tax that is deductible at source at the time of payment of any type of payment like salary, rent, interest, etc. Deductible by whom? Deductible by the payer. And whom we are talking about now? The payee. Who is the SSC? The one who has earned the income. But who is responsible to deduct TDS? The payer is responsible to deduct TDS. So normally we think SCs will earn the income throughout the previous year. After some time they will look at all their records and calculate their total income according to the procedure we know, and they will calculate tax liability and pay tax. That's what we think. No. Once again we have to understand there is a difference between tax assessment and tax payment. Now what we are talking about is tax payment. Payment need not follow the assessment. Payment can be sometimes even before the assessment. As and when the income is earned itself, the tax has to be paid, but not by the payee, not by the person who earned the income, but by the person who gives this income to the SSC. That is payer. So the payer has to deduct the tax while giving this income to the SSC. In general, for most of them, the TDS rate is 10%, though there are different rates applicable. We'll see that later. That is only just to remember the rates. But the concept is important. The payer cuts the TDS while paying income to the SSC, and the payer will pay to the government directly on behalf of the SSC. So the government has shifted the responsibility of tax payment from the income earner to the income giver. Can't help it, that's how it is. But now the payers would have cut all these things many times whenever there is a payment made by them, but it will be paid on behalf of whom? The SSC only. With the PAN number of SSC only, all these amounts will be credited to the government. Now after the assessment of the SSC is completed, we know the tax liability already, but on his behalf already so many payers have deposited TDS with the government. Means what? Indirectly he paid the tax already, though he did not pay, though the payers paid to the government, but on behalf of him only the payers paid to the government. It is his money. So whatever the amount of TDS that has been already credited to his account with the government, that should be reduced from the normal tax liability that we already calculated above, so that we determine the net tax liability. So the simple point is, After calculating all these things up to step 12, we know the final tax liability of the SSE, but that is not the amount he has to pay. That is the tax liability of the SSE. Liability is different, payment is different. How much he has to pay? He has to pay after deduction of TDS, if any, in his name, or TCS, if any, that will also we see, or advance tax, if any, applicable. We know we'll discuss these points later. But the concept is same. Concept of payment of tax happens as and when the income is earned. So, income tax is assessed after the previous year is completed. Assessment is happening. But income tax is already paid by the SSE while the income was earned itself. Sometimes he himself will pay, that is called advance tax. Sometimes his payers will pay to the government on his behalf, that is called TDS or TCS. So, these things already paid on behalf of the SSE or by the SSE should be reduced from the tax liability of the SSE. That is why we say credit for these things have to be given before finally finding out the tax payable. So what is the net tax liability of the SSE? That is what it is. The total tax liability already we calculated, minus TDS, minus TCS, minus advance tax paid if any. All these things are if any only. Then what we get is the tax payable by the SSE. Okay, that is the tax payable by the SSE. Or if it is negative, means what? Already he has paid more tax in the form of TDS, TCS or advance tax, but finally his tax liability came less. Then the remaining amount the government has to refund to the SSE. That will be processed by the government. And if any refund is due, that will be claimed by the SSE when he files the return of income. So whether it is tax payable by the SSE or whether it is refund to be given by government to the SSE at the time of filing of return of income, the SSE has to pay this tax. That is called as self-assessment tax. How much is that? Tax calculated according to the provisions of the Income Tax Act, that is tax liability minus of TDS if any, minus of TCS if any, minus of advance tax paid if any. That is the net tax payable by the SSE or refundable to the SSE if this amount is a negative amount. That is called self-assessment tax that has to be paid or claimed as refund at the time of filing the return of income. This is the procedure of overall computation of tax liability. Computation is one part. Payment is completely a different story. Payment can happen in the form of TDS, TCS, advance tax already. But finally, when the return of income is filed, the self-assessment tax has to be either paid or a refund has to be claimed according to this procedure. Final step is that is step 14. That ends the assessment of individuals, we can say. Okay, so that is about assessment of individuals in a nutshell. All the aspects related to the provisions of Income Tax Act of under various heads of incomes, you already know them. You should know them. You should remember them and apply them in the calculations definitely. Also, the special things like, if at all any special deductions like 10A are applicable or AMT provisions are applicable. If they are applicable, they have to be also looked at. And other problems, remaining problems in this chapter, I hope either you have done already. If not, also do them immediately. This is the question that will be asked for 10 marks minimum. So the biggest question in the entire income tax paper will be the assessment of individuals question. More questions you practice, the best for you it is. And that will revise the provisions of Income Tax Act already we know also. That is why all these concepts, entire procedure of heads of income, clubbing, set off carry forward, deductions, prior to that residential status, all of them come to climax with this chapter of assessment of individuals or computation of total income of individual SSEs and computation of tax liability of individual SSEs. With that, the assessment is completed. Computation part is completed. So what is remaining is the assessment procedures, which we will discuss separately. Those are procedural things. Computational things related to income tax are done. Remaining things are procedural things. For example, advance tax, how much has to be paid, when it has to be paid. TDS, how much percentage has to be deducted, like that. Those are all the procedural things. How to file return of income, when to file return of income, who should sign the return of income. All these things are procedural things. All of them put together, we can call it as assessment procedures. There will be not anything conceptual in that. It will be more of, I would say, by hearting the provision of rates or dates, as the case may be. That's all. If the Income Tax Act says you have to cut TDS of 10%, you have to cut 10%, as simple as that. There is nothing to explain there. So the remaining topics are mostly memory based things, which also will definitely be asked in the main exam, but 99% of the coverage of questions in the income tax paper is from the core aspects of computation of income and the computation of tax liability. That's what we have done or completed so far. In the next session, we will continue the discussion on assessment procedures like TDS, TCS, advance tax, return of income. Once again, I am repeating, computational aspects are done. Remaining things are procedural aspects. So computation aspects, first you have to complete all the problems in this ICI material, naturally. Then you have to complete the problems in Girish Ahuja. Then we will move to TDS, TCS or advanced tax related provisions, which will take less time for explanation, but yes, more time for by hearting, which you have to do later. That's it. We'll conclude today's session with that, and in the next session, we'll continue the discussion related to assessment procedures. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Thank you very much.